My name is Ebenezer Safodu. I'm a business strategist and a data specialist. Welcome to my Power BI Guru series. Today I have a very interesting guest. I've already been laughing before we started this interview, and I hope you are going to laugh too. I have the person of Pascal, and Pascal is of the BI Samurai group, and he is an award-winning BI developer. Recently, I judged, I think, the third best report in Switzerland. So our guest is very much vexed in the area of creating the HTML, CSS visual, which I learned recently. And check out his YouTube channel. But Pascal, kindly introduce yourself to my viewers in case people want to know who we are chatting with.
Yes, please. Well, award-winning and Power BI guru. Well, a little bit of a comedian, right? Thank you very much. So I'm very happy to be here. My name is Pascal. As mentioned, I'm the founder of BI Samurai. We're a company based in Switzerland. And what we mainly do is anything related to Power BI. So we mostly implement Power BI solutions. This can be big enterprise-wide implementations. It can also be just one small report for a smaller company. It can also be a little bit of training, a bit of mentoring, a bit of admin, and everything that has to do with Power BI in general. So it can also be a little bit of data warehousing and Power Apps and Power Automate, and all the Microsoft stack is basically covered by the team and myself. And as mentioned, we also have a couple of custom visuals in AppSource. And I think the ones we're going to talk about today are mainly the two which can display HTML. Whenever I say this, some people are already a bit scared because, they don't know HTML. But this should be really a hands-on session today. So I'm going to try to rebuild a couple of elements from scratch and also show everybody that there's not much that we really need to know about HTML. It helps, but also without HTML knowledge, we've built a couple of tools that can help you to create this with little bit of skills and some DAX skills and some Power BI. So yeah, we'll see.
Wow. All right. So viewers, that is the HTML man, comedian, award winner of many hats, probably 6 hats. Theory goes with him. So we are in for a ride today. We are going to have fun and enjoy ourselves with him. But before that, Pascal, I want to find out, what is your background? How did you get into BI? Because these are stories that helps my viewers to be able to know that it's possible for them to also get into it.
Yes. So I started the company about 6.5 years ago. Before I started the company, I was working mostly in financial controlling. So, and, looking at the numbers and always related to IT sort of, because there's always some tools that really spit out the values. And, with time, I was always more interested in the IT side of things and the tools that we used, and not really the numbers itself, let's just say. So when this company that I worked for decided to have a big implementation project for a new SAP, for SAP BW and SAP BPC, I was asked if I wanted to be a part of the project team. And well, yeah, I said yes, and I liked that, and that was very interesting. And I was moved away from the business and more into the project and into the IT side. And that's really when I said, that's more my kind of thing. That's what I want to do. Yeah, and then after this project, I started the company, and I started with, well, my very first project was an SAP project I needed to move to other tools. Power BI, I downloaded it, I installed it, that's it, right? I started playing with it, and I liked it, and I wanted to learn more. And I was watching a lot of YouTube videos and took courses and learned. Yeah.
So we have a financial controller who lost his way and now has found himself.
Yes, and now I'm always, to be honest, with many projects or with many, whenever you tell somebody that you're developing reports, the first thing people think is that's finance, right? Because when you say reports, they think about finance data and balance sheets and P&Ls and all that. But when I just think at all the projects we're doing at the moment, maybe one of them, maybe two of them is about financial data. And I really like the other ones where it is something about some completely different data far away from finance. If it's HR and we do something for talent acquisition and marketing and production and I don't know, all sorts of stuff. And I find that very interesting. It's good to have sort of a background with data. But honestly, the projects we're working on right now are completely different. And I really enjoy that to dig into new problems and new companies and new data and to really know what's there to find out.
All right. So why HTML? What got you into that?
What's
I mean,
HTML, huh? Yeah.
background, how did you get there? And what, at least give us a brief idea of HTML in case somebody does not know what it is, in summary,
Yes.
to a 5-year-old what it is. And then you can deep dive into the practicals.
Fantastic. So HTML is basically what is used in web design. So when you look at the website, it's using HTML. And if you think of a website or websites, and there's millions of them, every website looks very different. And you have different colors and backgrounds and buttons and tables and pictures and videos and drop downs and I don't know, all sorts of elements. And a lot of that is basically built in HTML. So with taking HTML and CSS to Power BI opens up quite many doors. And I'm planning to show you one of our sample reports just to show, a couple of things that actually can be done with just one visual. But why I decided that this would be a good solution was actually for a very specific client where that wanted to have a commenting solution. So they wanted to not only show that was finance data, not only their financial data, but also why the data is the way it is. So they wanted people, like the business people, to really write down comments explaining why the numbers are the way they are. And of course, this should be made dynamic, so it's linked to the data model. But at the same time, we also wanted this to be formatted. And before the smart narrative, there was simply no way to do that. You could have a text box and have formatted text, but that was not linked to the data set. Or you could have data or comments linked to the data set and display it in a, I don't know, in a card visual or in a table, but then you couldn't format it. So that was the initial idea, to just bring in the possibility to format text dynamically and also have the text itself dynamically and linked to the data set. And then, once we progressed, I actually started realizing that, hang on, there's so much more that we can do with that. So the report I'm going to show you, the sample report, is growing constantly because there's always new use cases, there's new ideas. So what you see or what you will see is not the end of it. It's just a couple of ideas and it should basically inspire people and to just show anything is possible. If you have an idea, if you have a specific requirement, a specific KPI card, a specific table, a specific, I don't know, we'll see. It's possible to do. And maybe it's even very simple to do, depending on what it is.
So takeout is that HTML gives that flexibility for you to be able to custom your visuals as well as to be able to introduce feedback, like you said in the particular case where you needed to introduce comment. And I mean, then it becomes you have the ability to do whatever you want to do. And that's the beauty about the business intelligence space. It seems as if there is nothing that is impossible once you put your mind to it. And you are reiterating this. Okay. So now take us through the report first, and then let's see which ones we can build.
Excellent. I want to say one thing because when I mentioned the commenting solution, the visuals at the moment, they don't allow write back. So we only display existing elements. So when we build commenting solutions, normally we use Power Apps to save and write back, but the visual to display.
All right.
But write back is in the backlog, but it's quite tricky to set up. So I don't want to promise anything, but yeah, it's something that is requested quite a lot.
Yeah.
But because the visuals are, you need to teach the visual everything that you want to display. It's quite a trick. It can be very tricky to use. So displaying is one thing, but writing back would need a lot of definitions. What do you want to write back and where does it go? So it's an idea, it's in the backlog, but you know, who knows? But let's see. Let's see. So what I wanted to show is, and also maybe one more thing I want to mention. We have two visuals that can render HTML. And one of them is called the HTML text styler. That's the one here. That's the one which is Microsoft certified, which means it cannot access any external sources. So it cannot access the internet. So for example, we couldn't display an image or a video which is on a website. And there's a couple of other limitations. Then the other one is the HTML and CSS viewer, which allows full CSS. It's not Microsoft certified, which means it can access external sources. So one of the things what is used a lot in this visual is really the display of videos within a report. So that's just a quick thing to mention that why we have two visuals. One is certified, a little bit less functionality. We try to always bring all the functionality in here as well. But yeah, there's just some limitations that we have. So let's just look at some of these elements in here and let's have an easy start. So for example, this here. So this is just one element where we have differently formatted text. And also you see this image, the icon of the visual itself is also part of this element. And if we just look at the measure here, this is actually what is happening. So this is a combination of just plain text and some HTML. So we have some plain text that this report contains, blah, 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 blah. And then we have strong. And strong in HTML, and let me just move this down so we can actually see it at the same time. Maybe let me also give it a background. Okay. So strong means we want to have bold text. So actually, once you have your HTML code, it's also quite easy to understand. Strong means bold. U, for example, means underline. And I can just add this U tag, and now you see that everything here is underlined. And whenever we want to stop something being formatted a specific way, we just need to close the HTML tag again. So with it, this is how we close. This is how we open. So we have the angle brackets and the U starts it and the /U ends it, which means now the underline will down here. The underline will disappear. So that's just some basic HTML, right? And then of course we can also have images in here. So you can see that the image, so this image here is actually coming from a measure. It's not an image because normally I cannot add an image when I go to, insert image. I cannot integrate this into another visual. So here I have a measure for an image. And let's just look at this measure. And you can see it's just a very, very long code. So basically what's happened here, and we've also added some comments which help you find the tools that convert images into measures. So this is base 64 code. So this whole code is just a definition of the image we saw. But I will show you how to create one of those. So nobody wrote this code, huh? Just that you know, there's a tool. There's a tool, and we just upload an image, and then the tool spits out what we want. Maybe let's look at this quickly.
I thought you wrote that. I'd have checked for your mental health.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I could do that. So let's just see. So we go to this link here, and that's exactly what's happening. We convert pictures, GIFs, and videos to DAX measures. I don't have a picture ready. Let me just take a screenshot of this. It doesn't matter, right? We just take a screenshot of this. Then I can say click to upload. Oh, hang on. Let's take one of the pictures from here.
All right.
Upload this. I give it a name. I call it BI Samurai logo. Copy the code. Go back to my report. Then I can create a new measure. Again, I get a lot of code in here, and this should actually now be, let's see if that worked. I add the HTML text styler, I add the BI Samurai logo, and that's it. So now I've created a measure that actually displays an image. And by having an image in a measure, I can also make it dynamic. So, I could link it to data, I could link it to a slicer, I can do all sorts of things because now this is basically just the result of some DAX.
Yeah.
So a lot of the things I'm going to show you, right? This is not the only thing that we can do, but we need to think one step ahead what the possibilities are. Let's go to the next page. On this page, we have a couple of tables. Small tables, right? And quite simple tables, but maybe it's interesting to see that also here we can combine different elements and we can have one row formatted bold, one italic, one underline, and then we have images and we have hyperlinks, something which you simply cannot do with the native table visual. But with the HTML visual, we can really format every single element exactly the way we want. Font size, the font color, the decoration, I don't know, images, borders, background colors, anything. And we can also use some kind of conditional formatting. So when we just look at this, you can see that Spain has a negative number and is red. Canada is also negative, but has a different shade of red. So like conditional formatting can also be added inside of our HTML and DAX. And you can see that sometimes the functions or the formulas can get quite long, but if we just break this down to single elements, and I would normally start down here and look at the variables once we get there, it's quite simple. Again, to read HTML is quite simple. We create a table. And we want to use the full size of the visual. We could also define this in number of pixels, but if we use percentage, it also means that our visual here is responsive. Depending on the size, it just changes. The percentage is always, not always, but in many cases better than hard-coded number of pixels. And then we say we define TR stands for table row, so we define a row. And then TD is the table data. So that would be the first column. So we have one column, two column, three columns. That's exactly what we have. We have the country, a value, and some text. So we have three columns, and every column has some kind of definition. In the first one, we add the selected country, quite simply with a selected value function. The second one, because it's a value, we can say text aligned right. Values we normally want to have right aligned, right? We can then have a dynamic background color, also again coming from a variable, where we say if our value is above 0, so it's above budget or previous year or whatever, we want to have a different color than when it is below. And same for the var format. The format is just the value formatted as a percentage, and so on. And this is how we define one row. So we only have one row. And here is where we end the definition of this row. But why do we actually have 5 rows in here? Because the visual also has a category placeholder. So we can split the visuals or the visual by data from our data model. So let me just get rid of the country from here. Doesn't make sense anymore because really the visual is expecting to have a split by something. Add the country again. And now I have the table for every country. And we also have a sorting placeholder because I guess I don't want this to be sorted alphabetically, but I probably want to have this sorted by, the biggest value on top or the other way around. So we also have a sorting placeholder. Let's quickly look at the KPI cards. And I think after the KPI cards, it's maybe time to create the KPI card. This should just be an overview of completely different KPI cards. Again, that's what I mentioned. When you think of a website, you have thousands of different designs. Same here. I'm not saying that we should do a circle and pink KPI card, but it's possible. I'm also not saying, a lot of these things are way too colorful and playful. But it can be done. It should just be a showcase and, maybe then somebody has an idea and says, oh, that's the KPI card I want to create. So let's create one.
Yeah.
The way I would create a KPI card is because let's assume we don't know any HTML at all. So we want a tool that helps us do that. So what we have created is this HTML editor, which can be found on bisamurai.com/HTML editor, where we have a rich text editor and it creates a measure in the end. And a KPI card technically is nothing but a table. So let's add a table and I don't know. Let's see. Let's see what we'll create. So let's just say this will be the basis of our KPI card. You can see over here on the right-hand side, this is the code which is created. So let's just say we want to have a API card, which also maybe shows the country, a selected country. And maybe it also shows something against a comparison to budget. What we could.
But why the choice of the second row?
Sorry?
Why the choice of the second row?
Oh, because I want to have a little bit of a gap.
Okay.
So this should be a little bit of a gap. I want to make this maybe a bit smaller and maybe the whole thing a bit bigger, and to have sort of a little bit of a gap, like a separator. Also this here can be a bit smaller, so maybe it looks a bit nicer. So this could be the country, and then maybe here we can also add special characters. Let's just add, maybe I want to have an arrow pointing up when I'm above budget and an arrow pointing down when I'm below. And it's a good idea to already add all the special characters in here. So I don't need to search them later on. Let's also take an arrow point down. And then we say here 100 above budget. I will replace this, of course, with data coming from our data model later on. But this is just as a placeholder. We do something like this, and then we add some formatting. Let's say this cell here, it's not going to be a nice KPI card. Huh? I'm just playing around. We can say we add some background color, and we can also say that we should have this center aligned. And right now it's hard-coded green, but I can, of course, then make this dynamic and say, if the result is positive, we have it green. If it's negative, we change it to red. And also, let's change the font color here to green. And maybe, how about some, I don't know. I'm not very creative today, but let's just add a border as well. This time, I don't know, blue. As I said, it's not going to look very nice. Let's keep it like this for now. This is our KPI card new. Copy the code. Go back in here. Maybe I create a new page so it's not that messy. New measure. Create it. And we'll see what this looks like. And then we can still tweak this code a little bit to make our
How do you copy the HTML code?
Sorry?
How did you copy the HTML code?
Sorry, here we have this. Here I give the measure a name.
All right.
And I just have this copy button, and we need to
I can't see the copy button. Okay, I can. Oh, okay.
We need to be a bit careful because normally in HTML we have a lot of double quotes. But in Power BI we need to replace this with single quotes because double quote simply has a different meaning. And
all right.
This tool is doing all this automatically. So when I copy this, I can just paste it in here, and you see that now I only have these single quotes here, and that's exactly what I need. And then we can
what
change.
You mean is that what you mean is after you copied it into a measure, you then brought your custom visual and then put the measure into the custom visual.
Yes. Copy
all right.
The code.
Yes, for those follow.
Copied the code, just pasted it in here. And then this measure goes to the HTML placeholder of the visual. And it shows exactly what we have defined in the editor. And now we can change a few things.
Okay.
We can make these, change a bit of the formatting. Also, I probably want to turn off the tooltip here. And let's see. So what can we change? We can, for example, make the first row, I can make this a little bit smaller. So I could say, you know, the first row should maybe only be 5 pixels. And now we should really start to see things happening. I can see in the first row, everything should only be 5 pixels high. I'm just going to do a few things and we'll see what happens. Didn't change anything yet. There's a few things that, yes, I know because I've done this a few times. So I guess when I remove this, let's see. Now it changed, right? So now this is a bit smaller. And let's just say this would be good for, maybe I want to get rid of some of the borders as well. So maybe I could say, where is the border? Here to have. Oops. Yeah, we need to be careful about spelling. I can change specific border lines also if I want. And also in the end, this is not going to look super nice, but you can see that some of the lines now change and I can really individually change different elements. Normally, I would probably do much more in here because here I don't need to know anything. So probably I should have done, I should probably have merged these cells to make it easier, you know, because then that's easier to do, then I don't need to write any code. So that's probably easier. But let's just do a few things anyway. Maybe let's just make the country or the background dynamic.
All right.
So let's just add it. Let's just look at our country table. So we have our countries. Let's look at the data model. I'm not sure. It's a messy data model because it's just sample data. So we have in the data table, we have results per country. So we have countries, we have actuals, and we have budget. So we probably have a measure called, I don't know, actuals. Correct. Actuals minus budget. So we want the background to be green if this is a positive number or red when this is a negative number. So I would probably add a variable. I would probably add quite many variables. I would add one variable, which is the value, which is just our actual minus budget. And we could add another one, which is the var for the background, maybe. And we can say that if the var value is above 0, then we can make it as simple as that and just call it green or red. We could also use hex code, or as you can see, we can also use RGB. The 3 different ways of using colors in HTML. Now let's just use green and red, and then we need to find the background. And as I mentioned before, finding things in HTML is quite easy because we know the background is on the second row in the second column. And also it's called something with background because normally HTML really is quite simple. It's not in the first row, so it must be in the second TR. And here again in the second column, and here we already have it. So background color should not be this hard-coded number, but it should be our variable. That's it. And now this should be dynamic. But of course, we also need to select. We also need to select the country. Sorry?
Is it with 2 parentheses or 1 parenthesis?
That's where we need to be careful, right? So whenever we change from HTML to DAX, we need to have these double quotes and ampersand in between. So this double quote finishes HTML. The ampersand says now we start with DAX. And then in the end, it's the other way around. We are done with DAX and we change back to HTML, or we change back to just hard-coded text.